This is Jody Roundhouse. Welcome to the Roundhouse Report. Please subscribe. Today is April 17th, 2019. I'm going to be talking about China and Taiwan. This is dated the 17th. This is the 16th. So today's the 17th. This is breaking news from the 16th. And it has to do with China and Taiwan. And it has to do with, once again, every time the United States sells weapons to Taiwan, which is that little offshoot island from China that claims itself as its own country, China says, no, you're part of China. You have a democracy and you've been doing your own thing for the last 50 plus years, but you're part of us and we're going to get you back sooner or later. So the United States, we've been selling Taiwan top-notch military equipment for many years now, much to the chagrin of China. So you have all this stuff going on with regard to the South China Sea and the trade war and all of that. And now you have this. The headline is, Pentagon approves $500 million for Taiwan F-16 support program amid Chinese threats. And it was written, the source is Zero Hedge. It was written by Tyler Durden. To deal with the thing with Taiwan and China, there were a number of years recently where Taiwan fell off the radar in terms of a potential conflagration point as to how a war may start. For a long time, people thought it was going to be over Taiwan. And then Taiwan kind of dropped out. At least that's what I could tell based on my own study and looking into it. This emphasis kind of shifted to the specific islands and throughout the South China Sea and everything. Taiwan, the Chinese and the Chinese fought a civil war, right, during the 1930s and 40s between the communists led by Mao Zedong and the Republicans led by Al-Qaeda. I'm not saying it right. Al-Qaeda, something like that. He was a Republican. He's the guy that we voted for. He was more Democratic leaning. And anyhow, he lost the Civil War in 1949 or something. Yeah, 1949 is when Mao won and established Communist China, which is what we have today. The last holdouts from the Republican Army, the Nationalist Army that lost, under Mao Zedong or whatever his name was, the last holdouts fled mainland China and they went to Taiwan. Pull up a map. Pretty good sized little island there as relative to the other islands in the area. They all went to Taiwan, and that was the last bastion, and this was over 50 years ago. This is when they lost the war in 1949, and they fled there. And ever since then, there's been a very big bone of contention. There's a tacit approval for China technically owning Taiwan. It's the, I think, quote, the one China, end quote, initiative or proposal, whatever you want to call it, the one China, where it's okay, everyone knows that Taiwan is its own thing and has been for a while, but in order to appease China, we have to at least say that, it's part of the whole one China thing that China pushes. Now, like I said, Taiwan kind of fell off the radar regarding China. Now, think tank analysts, at the Center for Strategic and International Studies, study for the Institute of War, various analysts and security experts, now they're looking at Taiwan as being, if there is going to be a war with China, it will be over Taiwan. Right? Okay. Makes sense. So they can consolidate their position. They already have the South China Sea. Now take Taiwan. You just consolidated all that. You like the nature noises? I'm in a freaking jungle. It's awful. Probably can't even hear me. Truly. Plug. All right. Okay, so the Pentagon recently approved a new multi-million-dollar training and maintenance program for F-16 fighter jets. I'm reading from the article. The program approved includes flight training, approved training exercises, supply and maintenance support, and spare and repair parts for the F-16. Okay, so that is pretty ambitious. One of the most ambitious things that we've done vis-a-vis Taiwan. In the mid '90s, there were two incidents. I believe there were two. The Taiwan Strait crises. If you want to Google those, get up on Wikipedia. Make sure those sources are good. The Taiwan Strait incidents, the Taiwan Strait crises, in the mid '90s. China was looking like it might want to invade Taiwan, so the United States pulled a couple aircraft carrier strike groups and parked them right in between China and Taiwan, right there in the strait. And we just sat off China's coast, and we were like, "What? What are you going to do?" And that humiliated China on the world stage. And ever since then, they've invested heavily in anti-ship missiles. Now, if we try to do that shit, they could just sink our, you know what I mean? They could just light us up if they really, really wanted to. Back then, they couldn't really do much. That's why it was so humiliating for them. Let's see. Back to the article. The program, quote, will train Taiwanese F-16 pilots and maintenance crews at Luke Air Force Base in Arizona. The U.S. State Department told CNN, quote, today's notification is consistent with the Taiwan Relations Act and our support for Taiwan's ability to maintain a sufficient self-defense capability. Okay, the F-16 fighter plane has been the backbone of the United States military for decades. We keep modifying and making it better versus the F-15, like the F-15E, like a whole bunch of variants. And then the F-16 came out, and then like the whole bunch of really cool variants like the Super Hornet and stuff like that. I believe it's an F-16 variant, at the F-16 Super Hornet. And we just keep modernizing and upgrading. So even if the airplane's frame itself or whatever is 20 years old, we modernize the insides of it, it's all good. So even though the F-16 is technically an old platform, modernized F-16s, like what we're doing with Taiwan, that's going to be essentially an almost fifth generation platform if they modernize it in accordance with how I've read about other programs being modernized. Older programs, older platforms being modernized, they make them almost into fifth generation programs. So a lot of people said instead of building the F-35, the United States should have just invested all that money in upgrading the F-16. Make it the same thing pretty much, Anyhow, so it looks like we are kind of, we being the United States, it looks like we're kind of cutting off. We're playing a long strategic game with China and Taiwan. The article says China has lately conducted a series of military games which many see as signaling and asserting Beijing's authority over Taiwan as the U.S. establishes closer military ties. Well, we used to have, to my understanding, closer military ties than we do now, or have had for the past decade. For the past decade, we've been kind of pussies, kind of like backing off and stuff, letting China threaten us and whatnot. The latest war game, the latest involved Chinese Sukhoi 30 and Yan 11 jets flying near the autonomous island, flying near Taiwan, which Taiwanese warplanes reportedly shadowed from afar. Taiwan's president, Tsai Ing-wen, I don't know how to say these names, Tsai Ing-wen hailed the new Pentagon-approved program, quote, timely, and warned that Beijing's stepped-up military presence near the island served to strengthen our resolve. So she's basically saying, China, the more you screw with this, the more we're going to beef up. She described the new program as coming, quote, a day after Chinese warplanes once again were flying by to sabotage stability in the Taiwan Strait and the region and damaging the status quo. That's according to the South China Morning Post. Quote, this is Taiwan's president continuing, quote, a big country in the region should never act so irresponsibly, this is referring to China. In safeguarding our national sovereignty, we will not give up an inch and will continue to uphold democracy and freedom. In prior years, the U.S. supplied a fleet of multiple dozens of F-16s to Taiwan, some of which were upgraded by Lockheed Martin to the Viper package from 2016 to 2018. Look up the Viper package. Pretty cool. It's an upgrade. It's like a mod. It's an upgraded version. So it appears as if America is kind of fine-tuning and polishing Taiwan's capabilities so that if in 5 years, let's just say so that within 5 years, if China pops off and seeks to grab it, we're trying to make it so that Taiwan can hold its own within the context of that war so that we could stay out of it. It appears as if we're getting their military ready so that they can defend themselves without direct American military help, so we don't have to get pulled in. We would essentially be ceding Taiwan in a way, but ceding with like prep. We're preparing them. We're modernizing their Air Force. It's going to be a state-of-the-art Air Force. Rocket technology, rocket interceptors, all that stuff. They're going to have they have and are going to have an increasingly state-of-the-art military. And then I think that at that point, we're going to be like, okay, we've beefed you up. You're on your own. Because a war over Taiwan, it's just, screw it. You give Xi Jinping the president of China. Give him Taiwan if it comes down to it. Come on, it's like they're Cuba, except it contains like American citizens. It'd be like if there was a feud in Florida, and the side that lost went to Cuba and made their own country. The rest of the United States is like, we're eventually going to take you back. You are Americans, even if you went to Cuba. It's kind of like Taiwan is kind of like that to China. One has to keep in mind that the United States is playing the long game. It's untenable, in 5 or 10 years, if not now. It's untenable to think that China that they'll have the capability and the will to do it at once, vis-a-vis Taiwan and South China Sea and the whole area, the whole Asian theater. And this new program, this F-16 modernization program, not simply selling them the weapons platform and the parts, but also giving high-value flight experience, which is vital for an Air Force. Flight experience from the best pilots in the world. We've been flying nonstop bombing sorties for the past 2 decades. America's is perpetual war, and most of that is from the air, bombing. This new program will potentially allow future U.S. presidents, because again, long game, 2020s, 2024, whatever, it will potentially allow future U.S. presidents to avoid in kind of a flash war scenario that may erupt overnight. We probably have notice of it, but we can let it play out without the United States necessarily committing. If it looks like Taiwan's about to get stomped, or if it looks like there are war crimes being done, we could make a justification for intervening. And one has to keep in mind that the only thing that needs to be done to take Taiwan is to secure those supply lines between China and Taiwan. It's water. So if we can bomb their boats and their naval ships and their landing craft before they even get to Taiwan, because we have that capability, we have air supremacy over China. Now that may not be the case. Nobody knows until the war starts. But on paper, we have air supremacy over China. We have naval supremacy over China. Anyhow, like I said, give Xi Taiwan, and if it comes down, to it, if it becomes a tit for tat thing over the trade war, or over the South China Sea, or over some other kind of incident, and the Asians are big on allowing their opponent to save face, so as a space-saving move, kind of cede Taiwan to Xi. And like I said, it's like China's Cuba, but it's worse because it's like post-Chinese Civil War. It's a post-Chinese Civil War breakaway province. So, like I said, it's like freaking worse, So the One China program that the United States has been upholding, at least ever since Nixon made his visit to China in the 1970s, and opened up the dialogue, initiated detente with the communist government. It seems clear to me that we are preparing and have been preparing the battlefield literally and figuratively for a long time. And Taiwan has been in China's crosshairs and on our radar for ever since the end of World War II, ever since the end of the Chinese Civil War, where the Republican Chinese who lost now are in Taiwan. And when they all fled, like I guess a major boat lift or whatever, they all fled to Taiwan. So China's like, ever since then, it's like, man, we're going to get you. But, like I said, look up a map and look at the logistical issues that any country would have in trying to take Taiwan. China obviously has an advantage. It's in their backyard. But when you take into account the United States and the sea lanes that travel around Taiwan, through the Taiwan Strait, etc., the warships that the United States maneuvers around, doing freedom of navigation exercises to challenge Chinese claims to artificial islands that they built that the international court has ruled against. Anyhow, it seems like if it comes down to it, we may cede Taiwan. We will back up South Korea, Japan, the Philippines, Australia, India, Papua New Guinea, etc. But when it comes down to it, Taiwan is such a hot button issue. I don't know what we would do if the Chinese suddenly landed 50,000 troops on the island in the course of 24 hours. I don't know what the United States would do, or what we could do without risking an all-out war. But it all depends on who's the White House in terms of how that war's fought and how, who will probably win. So, all right, this is the Roundhouse Report. Please subscribe, and thanks for watching.